Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. And Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. And Promoter 101. Get Promoter 101.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein. Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Flessick.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
From Hollywood, the Promoter 101 podcast, starring Dan Steinberg. This is Connor Merritt, along with Andrea Johnson and the Promoter 101 Orchestra, inviting you to join Steiny's guests, Lyte's Aunt Taylor and AEG Presents John Valentino, and a brand new war story from Todd Coder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Steiny.
How's that for an opening of the show? Episode 69. It's a big one. Right off the bat, we are joined by special guest host, Andrea Johnson. Welcome to the podcast, AJ.
Thank you, Dan. Happy to be here from beautiful Los Angeles, California. We have Lyte's Aunt Taylor dropping by to explain how he is using technology to protect fans from the secondary market. Later, AEG Presents John Valentino gives us a glimpse of his world. Then we'll provide a war story from Emporium's Todd Coder, plus the news of the week.
This is John Giddings, and I'm on Promoter 101.
We're finishing up our world tour, and catch us live when we come to a city near you.
For our international listeners, come hang with us at the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington in London for the International Live Music Conference, that's ILMC, Thursday, March 8th at 5 p.m. Dan will moderate Tales from the Front Line with manager Paul Crockford at ILMC.
If you've got something on your chest and you want to talk to us, we really do like to hear from you. So send us your notes, your feedback, your complaints, and me or Luke will get back to you when it's convenient to us, because we have day jobs, motherfuckers. Email at steiny@promoter101.net.
As we mentioned at the top, we're in LA at the Polestar Live Conference, and it's a circus out here.
Yeah, it's been crazy. The highlights have been amazing. What have you been enjoying from here?
Well, you know, it's always great to see everyone, have a cocktail or two, catch up. But I have to say, your keynote interview with Rapino was my favorite. I just loved watching you and trading back and forth.
Rapino was really fun today. I was blown away on how quick he is on his feet. But we're going to have that interview coming up next week on Promoter 101. I'm excited about that to share with all of our listeners.
Follow us on Twitter. I'm at AJMU19. Luke is W. Luke Pierce. Dan is at The Jew. And the show is at Promoters 101. That's Promoters, plural.
Hi, it's Kira Finkenberg. I'm the marketing and ticketing guru for Andy Hewitt and Bill Silva Presents. I'm on Promoter 101.
If you missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up with us at promoter101.net. This week, we're featuring a reissue of episode 26 featuring
X-Ray Touring's Steve Strange talks about his rise and Coldplay's touring.
Brandon R. Frankel teaches us about the world of tour marketing and branding.
Dawn Holliday talks about her early days working for Bill Graham to her exit from Slim's, as well as catching us up on her continued role at the helm of Hardly Strictly Bluegrass.
Plus, we'll catch up with one of the better international artists, LX.
Don't you think it's about time you actually subscribe to Promoter 101? It's not like it costs anything. This is a totally free service we are providing to you. So sign up wherever you podcast, and please tell some people and drop a review if you get a moment. Seriously, write them a review. They're megalomaniacs.
Hey, this is Jared Paul from Faculty, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
News of the week.
In place of the news of the week, we're going to give you our review of what was going on day one here at Polestar. Andrea, you sat through a number of the sessions. What'd you think of the comedy panel?
I did. The comedy panel was a panel of heavy hitters. You had Jeff Wills, Live Nation, moderating, who let us know that in the past year, Live Nation has grossed $500 million on the shows that they've promoted. That's pretty impressive.
I think most of that is, just Dave. Chappelle's just killing it.
Yes, yeah. So Rick Greenstein was on the panel, Steve Levine, Nick Nucifor 4.0. So it was a panel of heavy hitters, Dan.
So Stacey Marks has got an amazing roster, and what's going on in comedy, those are three of probably the four biggest agents in the business, and Jeff
Yes.
Wills by far is the biggest comedy agent in the world. We both know a lot of those guys really, really well, and they can talk shop on any level. Did you pick up anything on that panel?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems like comedy has never been hotter than it is today. And for me, it's interesting to sit in a panel just to learn, because obviously I am not a comedy agent. So it's interesting to see the similarities to the music industry, and also the vastly different business that they're in, where every artist is really a multi-hyphenate. Truly, television and film is a key ingredient of almost every comedian's career. And so you have to think that way from the very beginning.
Okay, what else did you check out today? Were you the big data panel?
I was in the big data panel. Full disclosure, I did not stay for the whole thing. Every time I sit in panels like that, I learn something. I also realize how much I don't know.
That was Jared's panel, right?
It was a collection of everyone from StubHub to Gupta Data to like big data analytic companies that are hired generally by major festivals, major promoters, major venues, because these aren't cheap services.
Right, so they're using that data to like engage the fans and find a way to get them the second time, so we still have that relationship with them instead of like having to find them every time we go back in.
100%. And also being able to take those data points and follow the fan out the door, right? So depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether that's an artist who's trying to eventually build their mailing list or sell them something else down the line, or if it's the venue trying to sell tickets to another show or sporting event, et cetera, et cetera.
So if we could actually get the relationship with each ticket holder, we wouldn't have to spend $10,000 to market a theater show every time through a market.
Well, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the data, right? If we can open that up, if we can get that information, we're already more than halfway to where we want to be. This kind of thing fascinates me, and it's a shame that Luke isn't here, because I know he's totally geeked out about this.
It is a shame Luke isn't here. He's a good hang.
But I mean, most of that data, at least as it relates to those of us who are in the live touring business, is locked up inside ticketing platform.
What else did you catch? What other panels?
The Women in Music panel that Corey Christopher moderated, and I think she did a fantastic job. A great panel of ladies, performers, industry types. It's a very timely conversation, and I was very happy to see a lot of men in the room.
I think that they're doing real business for no other reason. The women on that panel are doing solid business in the industry, and you have to take that seriously regardless. And obviously it's a sensitive moment in the industry, but not everybody is able to deal with everybody in the same matter. And I mean, I do a good amount of business with you, and we have a good back and forth and an easy relationship of joking and very playfulness, but there is a different relationship in the industry right now, and things are sensitive. It's a new time.
Yeah, I think it's overdue. Those of us who are ladies who have been in the industry for, speaking for myself, 16, 17 years now, you finally feel a little vindicated, right? Like, oh, it wasn't just me. This guy really is kind of a creep. But also, back to the panel, it was just some of the nuanced things, challenges about being a woman on the road that perhaps even the most enlightened, best intentioned men wouldn't really ever think about, because why would you? For example, having to ride a bus as the only woman on a tour and the challenges that come with that.
Because occasionally you'll fly into one city, you'll stay with the band for the weekend, and you'll ride from one city to the next.
Yeah. And
so you're basically in a men's locker room.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And you kind of just have to find a way to kind of be cool with that. And also,
I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah, and why would you have? So about that, and also very real security concerns that come along with some female performers that some men don't have to deal with, from the talent's point of view, of course. Kimberly from the band Perry was talking really eloquently about some of the challenges that she's faced and extra security measures that they've had to take just simply because she's an attractive woman who fronts a popular band. And unfortunately, there are crazies out there.
Well, that's a sad state in the industry that women have to deal with that, and I don't think it's a new thing. I
It's
think
not.
It's being talked a lot more now because of things that have been involved lately, and it's definitely a hot topic that I think things are hopefully going to improve because so much attention is now being spotted on them.
Yes, well, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
What else did you take in today?
Well, loved your panel with Michael Rapino. You really did knock it out of the park. Tune in next week if you weren't at the live event.
I gotta say, he wasn't half bad himself. He
He was fantastic.
He made some good jokes.
And also for those of you who are listening at home next week who don't have the visual, when Dan came out onto stage, he was carrying like a girl's backpack, turquoise JanSport from 1985. Anyway, Michael picked it up and pretended to throw it into the audience, and that was before the interview even started. It was a brilliant piece of physical comedy.
It's an interesting moment when 2 seconds before you get on stage, you're starting next to Mark Cuban, Mark Geiger,
Irving Azoff,
Michael Rapino, and you're just like, wow, I do not belong.
You have arrived
here.
Well, you clearly do belong there.
It was a very odd moment, and then Irving Azoff introducing me, and definitely a new moment. But that was a lot of fun. Polestar was a great host, and Live Nation was super kind to invite me to do that with them.
And the room was packed. You couldn't have shoehorned another person in there.
Yeah, those guys said it was the highest attended session in the history of Polestar.
I believe it. It was really fantastic. Well done.
I had a lot of fun with it. I can't wait to share it with everybody next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Rich Best with Live Nation Los Angeles, and I'm on Promoter 101.
And finally, we want to take a moment to shout out our badass of the week and put a spotlight on China Schwan Farrell. She is one of the most beloved faces in the industry. She's a legend in the sponsorship side of the business, respected across all platforms of the industry. This and many, many more things makes her our badass of the week. Congrats to you, China.
Yay, China.
Hi, I'm Holly Gleason, editor of Woman Walk the Line, here at Promoter 101, where they know how to get it done.
In our feature interview this week, we have a special interview with Lyte's Ant Taylor, explaining how he is using technology to protect fans from the secondary market.
Ant Taylor from Lyte, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is surreal.
You've got a very fan-friendly social media form of consumer protection for the concert business that you're developing. And it's being really widely touted right now by the artist community and managers and agencies. Can you tell us a little bit about Lyte?
What a difference 3 years makes. It's been nice to see the positive reception, especially over the last year. So I think the best way to tell you about Lyte is to tell you where I got the idea for Lyte.
And you don't spell it L-I-G-H-T. You spell it in its own unique way so you can have the word.
Yeah, and so I can have to spell it for every person who asks me what my website is.
It's L-Y-T-E, right?
Yeah, it's L-Y-T-E. So I was actually at the Olympics in 2012. I didn't know a thing about ticketing or secondary markets.
What event did you star in?
Well, in my head, I was on the basketball court, obviously.
Got it.
They needed me. So I was walking past the beach volleyball venue, which they built right outside of 10 Downing Street, which was, it's not like I'm a beach volleyball fan. It was just insane that a beach volleyball court was sitting outside of basically the White House in the center of London. And every day I'd walk by and I'd be like, we got to stop and we got to go in. And I'd weave my way through throngs of fans throwing their bodies in front of me to pay me for my tickets, any amount of money to get in there. And I would walk in and I'd sit down. And especially in the first week, the entire row that I was sitting in, or sometimes the entire section, was empty. And I thought to myself, something is fucked up about this. Like, these are athletes that have spent 25 years of their lives to be here. I'm pretty sure if I pulled humanity, every single person, if they'd heard of the Olympics, would want to be there and be willing to pay something.
Especially if they made it to outside the venue. Right.
So this just didn't make sense. And I figured something is sort of broken here, but obviously didn't know the first thing about
clearly those tickets had been distributed and just not used.
Exactly.
It's not like it didn't sell. There was demand.
Exactly. And I was like 50% right. I figured this was a pricing problem and a middleman problem. I didn't know about all the like allocations and sponsorships and bullshit that you got to deal with
at that point too.
Yeah.
Packaging.
Right. So I came back here and I started digging in on the secondary and just basically scraping data, all the data I could find on the aftermarket. And over a period of like 6 months, proving all of the gnarliest shit, which most of your listening audience probably already knows.
So when you say you were scraping data, are you the guy that can write that code yourself and pull that algorithm to go on the net and do that? Or did you hire somebody to build that out?
I'm definitely not the guy who's banging out code unless you want it to not work, or I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
But you guys did that internally. You didn't outsource it.
No. Yeah, all internal.
So you developed the software.
Yeah. I mean, it took some iterations. But yeah, first we had to prove the problem. I actually truly didn't know how bad it was. You get a marketplace where you thought every listing was sort of fairly priced by somebody on the other side. And we showed price clusterings on StubHub where they'd hold the market price really, really high. And then they drop one ticket every sort of hour or every 10 minutes. So it would appear like that ticket was a deal based on the listings. But the worst of it was that we saw guys invading the on sales, carting inventory, turning around on StubHub, listing futures, tickets they didn't actually own, waiting for people to get kicked out of the on sale, jumping over to the secondary market, buying the ticket from essentially a bot. And then the bot would come back and clear the primary transaction.
So the bot was a cyber sitting.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And that was enraging.
Well, that explains a lot. For those of us that can watch on sales in real time, particularly with Ticketmaster software, we can watch the venue click off, but we can also see how many people are holding tickets at that moment and looking at them and processing. And part of that is it takes 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how tech savvy you are and how often you buy tickets, to go through the system and buy it. I mean, it's not just like Amazon where you just click done. It takes a minute or two. So if you go on sale at 10 a.m., it's usually 10:05, 10:07 before I start literally seeing sold numbers click in. I can also see how many people are holding tickets at each moment. At 10:01, I can see that there are 1,200 people looking at tickets that have tickets in their cards. But we only sell a third of those usually, give or take, in that first 10 minutes.
By the way, those stats are mana.
Mana?
Those are stats we don't get to see. But you can shorten the window and probably address some of that, the sort of checkout window.
Well, there's a problem with that too, that Ticketmaster is the easiest of all the ticketing systems to use. Particularly, they keep it simple for people like our parents who aren't technology savvy. They try to make it as easy as possible to get you through. But some systems are harder than others, and we lose sales that way too. But that's certainly part of the problem.
It is, certainly.
As a promoter, is it a problem once I've sold the ticket and somebody else has bought it and they've diminished my risk on 2 more seats? Is that really a problem for argument's sake?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
I mean, if the artist cares, it changes the problem. But as an investor, I've moved my units. Isn't that all I should care about?
No, what I saw then is you had to make that choice. Right? I've never bought a show and had to sell it a bunch of times. And the way I describe your guys' business, it's like you've got a product you've got to sell, but you've got to build the entire grocery store. Then you've got to market and get people into that thing to sell the product. Maybe you sell it out, and no matter what, you got to knock down the whole grocery store and do the whole fucking thing again. It's hard. It's a hard business. At that time, what I saw was promoters had to make a decision. I either move risk off of my balance sheet as fast as possible, or I try to do the right thing by fans and I could lose my shirt. And my thing was like, why can't technology bridge that gap? Why can't you have the assurance that you can ultimately sell out without needing to move it through middlemen and offload a bunch of risk in that way? All that to say, you're absolutely right. That's a sensitivity, but I do think that hurts you long term. Fans are overpaying through those channels, which means less money paid on beer and food and merch. If you're a promoter in a market trying to manage sort of lifetime value of your customers over a period of 10 years or 20 years, it is not a winning strategy to have a middleman come along and skin people on each individual show. And so I think those trade-offs are harder maybe to measure.
And I understand the artist camp being upset by the idea that there's revenue being generated off of the product that we've created in the secondary. But at the same time, I don't think Chevrolet is concerned when they sell a car to someone that they're reselling again. They expect most cars to be resold a couple of times in the life of a car. Those people come back that bought the original car and buy a new car, and they sell it to somebody else that wouldn't buy a car that's $55,000.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be some version of what we know as reselling. Most Chevys aren't being resold for 3x sticker price off of the lot, right? My thing is, we talk about pricing. I don't disagree with the premise that primary inventory might be mispriced. Fine. What I challenge is that secondary market prices equal market price. I think that's also wrong. And I think that's wrong because individual brokers or scalpers are incentivized to optimize the value of the chunk of tickets they have. They are not incentivized to fill a stadium at the optimal price. And our tool in Lyte is about giving a promoter the ability to find market price, which is typically a lot less than what we're seeing on some of these secondary marketplaces.
I find that sports does this better than music, and always has. Sports has always been 2 to 5 years ahead of music. We tend to follow them. We watch them and say our fans will never do that. not realizing that they're the same fucking people.
I feel like the rights holders we talk to in sports are always looking at music promoters, and music promoters are always looking at sports.
Reminds me of that old marketing commercial where they talk about we got to do it faster and quicker like the little guys, and they want to do it like the big guys, and it's a full circle thing. It's like we got to move faster like them. It's like we got to act like we're the big guys. Like the grass is always greener.
Or someone else's problems look a lot better than mine.
Well, there's a couple of other things that sports has to do that we've never had to deal with. On the level of the NBA or Major League Hockey or the NFL and even NASCAR, their brand recognition is so big that they've built to a point where TV carries the fact that they're constantly creating new stars. Every year there's a new system. It's a new class, just like college football. TV has helped create the Johnny Manziels. With the secondary teams, and minor league baseball is a great example, there are no stars yet. These are people that have come out of college that are still developing, that are moving into, hopefully, AAA ball. Being a marketing guy that has to figure out how to sell out a stadium in its secondary market or a tertiary with people no one's ever heard of, with just the concept of come out to the park, and they have to sell 70 games a year at home, that's a whole nother headache. You are literally trying to create demand, and you have an abundance of supply. You just want people in so they're buying F&B. You know, it's not about, at that point, having the Michael Jordans. They just don't have them. It's about creating them, and once they create them, the bigger team steals them. It's this constantly, there's a hole in the bucket kind of thing where it's just never going to fill.
Yeah, I think that's so right. I mean, there's some situations we've sort of joked when we look at sports, there are definitely tickets that should be negatively priced because the value of that seat is, you know, the negative price of the seat plus whatever I spend on my hot dogs and beer.
But the guy that figures out how to sell those tickets, though, is the best marketer in the business.
Absolutely.
I only have one night of the Killers playing a market. They have 70 nights. I'm not going to go this week. Maybe I'll go next week. Oh, I didn't go to a game this year. Oops. Killers may not come around for another 2 or 3 years. It's like, that's one night. It's a whole different value of supply and demand. It's insane.
That's exactly right. And I think where you're going is what I fully agree with, which is resellers. It's not that brokers or resellers per se are bad. They aren't bad. Every industry has them.
Oh, I think the industry has agreed that they are bad.
It can be a part of your distribution strategy. If a guy brings a unique talent of marketing to some audience in your market that you can't get yourself, sure, he should be a part of your distribution strategy. But at the kind of scale that we're seeing on the music side for, as you say, these shows that are coming around once every 2 years, it's just not a requirement. I just think technology can replace a lot of that. And even actually in sports, you're seeing a lot of teams consolidate sort of their approved brokers from hundreds to 4 or 5 or 6, where they apply tighter controls around sort of governance of how they resell tickets, who they resell them to, what kind of data they get back from
that.
that.
Done for it, kind of creating a safe place like eBay to work in the system.
I'd say it's more like what Ticketmaster has done with the Warriors, where if I'm a season ticket holder, I've got a really easy tool to distribute my tickets, but it's all controlled by the actual franchise. The franchise has the data, knows what butts are in seats, etc.
A new avenue to distribute tickets through, you're reconnecting people and moving their product without letting someone get gouged. That's the whole idea, right?
That's the whole idea. And I call it a fan-to-fan exchange because that's sort of taken. If I'm honest, I don't really think about it as a fan-to-fan exchange. I think about it as 2 features that we're giving to promoters. Feature number 1 is we allow people to book a credit card reservation for your show through a site that's powered by us, but marketed by you. And that allows you to sort of queue demand after you sell out of a ticket tier or an event, which is very, very powerful. Just to see alone how sold out you are is amazing. But that basically is an end around on what we know today as the secondary market. But the second feature is the ability for people to return tickets, which may sound like nails on a chalkboard to some of your listeners and not very intuitive.
Right, because we're not selling an option.
Right. And today, the standard is not refundability of tickets. Totally fair. We work today for very, very popular events, and we find that we take like 1.6 times more reservations than we get tickets returned. So there's more than enough demand in these markets to suck up the supply as people return tickets. And the effect of those 2 features is to put most of what you know as the secondary market in your control. typically more than 50%.
And what do you take for this service?
So there's always a difference. There's always a lift between the return price and the reservation price. And we split that with the promoter, 50-50.
But is that 20% of the face value? Is that 2% of the face value, roughly?
It varies from show to show. So the way I'd say it is it's typically like anywhere from 20 to 50% of a discount to what the secondary market average price is.
Okay.
And we're also squeezing the secondary market margin. So
you're undercutting the secondary, but still it's being sold over face value.
Yeah. I mean, for bigger events, we find a way of driving prices back down towards face value. So for your major festivals.
So you're saving fans money while putting extra money back in the promoter's pocket.
Exactly. Every single ticket is a discount to the secondary for fans, which is great.
I see the win there for the artist. I see the win there for the fans. If artists come running to this concept?
Yeah, no, one of our first clients was Mumford & Sons. Adam Voith and Adam Tudhope have been real partners to the company, and we've run with them now through 4 or 5 different tours. It's a good balance, fan experience, control, data.
So you saw that the artists cared about that, but they had a vision that they were trying to deliver to their fans at a budget. They had a breakpoint they were trying to deliver it for because they thought our fans need to pay for parking. They're going to go out to dinner. They're going to buy a t-shirt. We have other things they're going to do, and hopefully we can get them in and out for under $100. Seemingly making sense because every time you leave the house, what's the whole evening cost you? Babysitter, everything else. You guys are helping make that possible.
Yeah, and this is my argument around pricing. Don't tell a promoter who understands his market and understands the size of the wallet of fans in his market that he mispriced that show. It is just an incomplete statement. If you're thinking about entire lifetime value of a customer, that just doesn't make logical sense. I'd still say it's early days. We've had a few shows where we have the promoter partnership. We're integrated with the primary ticketing company. We have an artist partnership. So we've got all 3 marketing this service over the secondary market. And that's where we're seeing market share shift of like 95%. It's really powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing numbers right there.
Yeah.
And you guys have been up and running now for 3 years?
Yes. It's been 3 years.
But it seems like there's some critical mass that's come to it in the last 6 months or so. Like, it seems like everybody's kind of starting to recognize and realize you're there.
Yeah, we entered last year. I was telling someone last night, we entered last year with 5 partners and exited the year with 300 rooms and festivals across the country. And this year, the product just hit a maturity. We did something like 2,800 ticket exchanges for Newport Folk Festival last year, which was like 80% of the secondary market, saved fans $400,000 against the secondary market. So we're starting to see some of these markets sort of mature around the concept of, hey, if I have a ticket I can't use, the first thought is return it to my promoter. Or, hey, if I see that sold out sign on a box office, my first thought is find where I can place a credit card reservation with my promoter. So that's really exciting. The other piece that's exciting is we integrated with Ticketfly and 5 more primary ticketing integrations. So, our goal is to stay agnostic to primary ticketing systems, but also be accretive to them. So it's really important that we plug in to whatever your box office technology is today and are a flip of the switch for you as a promoter.
Are you guys also on Eventbrite now that they've come together?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We work with Eventbrite on a few things, one of them being Newport Folk Festival.
So you guys are really trying to be everything to everyone simultaneously with your product.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's we're pretty focused on what our product is, which is the way you got to be.
But you're trying to put that in every outlet that wants it.
Yeah, and what I saw, I came from outside the industry, right? 5 years ago. My first thing was, who's important? Like, who matters? Who are the key stakeholders? And you just sort of got to follow the money, right? It is the promoter, the artist, the fan, and the primary ticketing company that brings them together from a technology standpoint. Once I figured out those are the constituents that mattered, we made sure that the product made sense to all 3 or 4 of those constituents.
You're serving a lot of masters.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. One way that's hard is it would be really tempting to, just market any show, whether it was sold out or not. But we give our promoters the option to turn us on or off at their discretion at every individual ticket type level. That's an example of serving a master, but long term, if I want to build this to last, it's got to make sense to your business and it can't cannibalize your primary on sale. So yes, it's definitely a lot in terms of we got to make sure it makes sense to those constituents, but we figured that out. So
does your partnership with Ticketfly preclude you to making partners with other major ticketing companies? Could you guys be in business with ShowAir and eTix and Ticketmaster in the future as well?
Yeah, we can absolutely partner with any primary ticketing company. So we partnered, for example, at the end of this past year with Gingerbread Shed, Golden Voices, I think mainly festival ticketing platform, and we're powering the Stagecoach Festival this year. And there are a couple more that we'll be announcing over the next couple months.
It seems like your product has been accepted by the guys that matter, and everybody else will come along, if they haven't yet, sooner than later.
Yeah, I hope so. We definitely got a ways to go, but it's showing good progress in this last year.
Awesome. Well, you're certainly making waves in the industry and people are paying attention. Appreciate you taking time and being with us on Promoter 101, Ann.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Ann is one of the most impressive people in the business. He's clearly smarter than the average person. When you encounter him in real life, you see that instantaneously. What an impressive guy.
Hi, my name is Toby Leighton-Pope. I work for AEG Presents in the UK, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
Steiny, I want to jump into some of your tweets from the past and explain what was going on in that mind of yours when you wrote each of these Promoter 101 tweets. Do you ever wonder, where do all these towels go we pay for on every show?
Yeah, there's just massive amounts of towels like in the lounge of the buses, I think. Just that they're stealing them, right?
Yeah, well, I also think that Craig Newman has a lot of them on his couch right now. Dear touring artist, not carrying your own backline is an amazing waste of money. Dan made me say that. This was not, I did not write that.
No, I wrote it. Of course I wrote it. But seriously, carry your shit. It saves all of us money. It's just a waste to give to the backline companies.
That does it for Promoter 101 tweets. You can follow Dan at The Jew on Twitter. If you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, feel free to tweet them at us or email them over. Anything that makes us smile or makes us feel good about ourselves will get used on the show.
Probably not.
Hi, this is Stuart Galbraith. I'm the CEO at Kilimanjaro, and I'm on Promoter 101.
This week we have an epic war story from Emporium's Todd Coder.
Todd Coder from our Emporium team with a great war story. What do you have for us, Todd?
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. So it started with Hangout Music Festival, something I'd always enjoy talking about. It was just a crazy time for everybody who was involved with the festival itself. I had a bunch of idiots that were trying to put something on, and we had no clue what we were doing. Throughout the process, we had no idea how to book bands for a festival. We were booking clubs at the time. I had no idea what a radius clause was, had no idea what costs were for festival acts. So it was a huge, huge learning experience for everybody involved.
Learning by doing.
Exactly. We were thrown to the wolves rather quickly. However, during the weekend, we had a multitude of different challenges, and weather was one of them. And we had a storm cell that was coming through Texas and caused a handful of artists to cancel. Jacob Dylan and Nico Case were supposed to do a set on Sunday. We had to scramble and fill that slot with a local act. On Sunday, Jerry Jeff Walker was supposed to play, and he got stuck in that weather as well, couldn't make it. Later on that day, we had that storm cell actually come through the festival site. So we had to evacuate about 12,000 people in a matter of 30 minutes. Had the ability to get everybody safely sheltered, and by the time, I think it was around 3 o'clock, Michael Franti and Spearhead took the stage, and everything was beautiful. The sun broke through the clouds, and it was a glorious day. It was a good way to come back.
The magic of Michael Franti always saving the day.
We just had so many people acted as ambassadors for that event. The rest is pretty much history at this point.
Well, hey, man, thanks so much for taking the time and talking to us at Promoter 101. Todd Coder.
Thanks for having me.
Always thrilled when we can have any of the guys from the Emporium crew drop by on the show. Todd is just one of the finest of our team.
This is Andy Levitt with Live Nation Comedy. You're listening to Promoter 101.
We are joined next by AEG Presents Southeast's John Valentino, who gives us a glimpse of his world.
John Valentino from AEG. Man, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's good to be here.
Florida is your world. It's one of the markets where AEG is possibly the bigger player than Live Nation. You guys just do so much volume down there and just kill it. So well respected in the business. How do you come about going against that massive competitor in a market like that and holding your own?
You work hard every day and you do what you do. And our volume is about 500 shows a year. The other guys are huge and get a lot passed through to them. But we're happy to be doing what we're doing. And we work on every level, from the club level, the arena level, and that's how we do it.
I can't imagine having a conversation with you without talking about Phantasma and the early days and the foundation down there in Florida where you got started. Can you talk about that a little bit, how you got involved there?
Well, sure. I mean, I was a student at Florida Atlantic University. John Stoll and Gary Proper became friends of mine. I relied on them for talent. I hung out with them both, and I learned so much when I started working with them. Gary Proper was a professional surfer for 11 years, so he would take me on the road. We'd do the shows together, and the band would come up and want to meet Gary because he was in all the magazines. And John was just an unbelievably savvy businessman and really had the drive, the desire, and the passion. And I just soaked up as much as I could in those early days.
John has been gone, I think you told me last night, it's 10 years now.
10 years this month.
One of the truly entrepreneurial spirits in the business and well liked. He was the president of the North American Concert Promoter Association for a little while and truly one of the bigger indies in the country and very outspoken. Obviously a big role model to learn the business from.
Absolutely. John had a lot of friends. He cared a lot about the bands and fans, and he was well focused. He was well funded, and he knew the music. So John was a great place to start. I was lucky to have a promoter like that based in Florida, in West Palm Beach, where we are to this day. And Phantasma, I saw it grow from maybe 40 shows a year to a few hundred shows a year. And we did everything, again, from the club level to the arena level.
John still exists in your life through his son who works for you.
Jesse's a great guy and a very sharp buyer. He deals with it like it's his own. He researches things really well, and we're really lucky to have him and enjoy working with him a lot.
You went from being one of the biggest independent promoters in the country to working for one of the biggest major promoters in the world. What was that shift like when you wound up at AEG?
John and I would sit down and we'd talk it out. In 10 minutes, we'd plan our day, plan our week, and we'd go for it, and it was much more unstructured. But these days, business needs to be done on a higher level, much more projections, much more budgeting, much more planning. That's the right way to do it. AEG is really good at it, and I'm happy to be part of that team.
You were talking about projections before we started recording. Does that take up time with the corporate structure things and take away from buying as far as the planning and projecting that maybe wasn't part of the independent world that you came from?
I think it helps you focus a lot more. It helps you realize, maybe what you did the year before, where your year might be going this year. It's hard sometimes to sit down and think about or plan or project or promise what will be coming when you haven't even gotten the call yet. But I think it's the way things need to be done, and it really helps you set a goal and you strive to achieve it and exceed it.
It's a different world. It had to be an adjustment to get used to.
I think the business is a different business. I mean, it's different now than it was 3 or 5 years ago. It's certainly different than it was 10 years ago.
I guess we deal with the factor of the constant changing and the concept of media. Print used to be the first and foremost. The idea of not having a breaker ad for a show anymore is just amazing. If you'd told me that 20 years ago, that we wouldn't even be talking about breaker ads for half of our shows, if not more.
The newspapers have gone down to basically pamphlets on those weekend sections. I still like to look at them and see what's going on sometimes and just see actually how bad they've gotten. But it's all about reaching people where they are and being on their computer screen or their phone. It's not so much about having a print ad in the newspaper, that's for sure.
Remember the sold out thank you ads when you'd go to Polestar and look at the LA Weekly, because everybody would run the sold out thank you ads to impress the other record labels and execs in town. They clearly weren't for the fans, but those started going away. And then the on sale ads started going away. And now it's all about the online business. But you see those migrations of how the business changed and how you have to change your form of business to communicate. Email and text and Facebook messages. It's just a different business, and the cycle has stopped. It used to be you'd be on the phone, but the phone would stop ringing from the agents and the managers at a certain point. But now with the cell phones, weekends, nights, the cycle never really stops anymore.
That's so true. And I say that I used to know everybody's job, and I could do everybody's job. I mean, in the Phantasma days, I really felt like I could. And that's why these days it takes a team, because you really can't know everybody's job, from marketing to finance to the intricacies of how involved production has gotten, to buying and promoting, acquiring and hiring and budgeting. It's just, there's so many things. To have a basic understanding of most of those things is really the key. But to try and get too caught up in conquering any one of them prevents you from being an all-around person.
Can we talk about some of the resources that the major promoters actually have that may not have been available when you were an indie? The ability to call other buyers around the country that are working on the same acts, the ability of data of dates that have played out and how they'd be able to compare that stuff to your shows, the stuff that's available to you that maybe wasn't before?
One of the first things I can tell you is when I first came to AEG, I was on a call and heard about a tour from an artist that rarely ever tours, and it was Tom Waits. And so Stuart was a longtime friend of mine. And
Stuart Ross,
yes. No plans of coming to Florida. And I called him up and he found us a date. So that was pretty cool. And I probably would have never known that if I wasn't tied into a larger network.
And you got to promote one of the coolest artists on the planet.
We all tried to, right? I was so happy to have that one. That was such a great show.
That deal's not about money. That one's about pride. You've got a pretty big region. It's not just Florida. You go to a handful of other states. What encompasses your day-to-day territory?
Well, really, we focus mainly on Florida because Florida does have so many media markets and so many regions and great venues. But we do leverage our relationships to go where we believe we can help the company get more shows. And so we do go into Carolinas and work with Alan Corbett up there, and go into Allie's territory and work with her somewhat. Go to Atlanta when we do have the relationship. And, I think these days you do need to do that. There's certain artists and people that focus on certain promoters, and it seems to be that a lot of them like to work with fewer people with larger regions. So we're happy to be able to bring that to our company when we can.
Makes a lot of sense. With those relationships, guys like Wayne Forte, who really enjoy working with you. Who else are your day-to-days? I know Mario Toronto's big with you.
I say that, with my 5 buyers that we have, I challenge anyone to talk about an artist or present an artist that one of us doesn't know. And so now there are so many different agents that we all share those responsibilities within those companies. But certainly all the majors I work with on a regular basis, and, CA and William Morris, of course, has a lot of traffic that comes through. There's a lot of different agencies, and between all of us, we cover it really well.
Now that the industry has found so many more vast genres, the podcast, the multimedia, live performance stuff, the symphony shows, things that are non-traditional, that are now a day-to-day part of our lives. How do you tackle something when somebody brings you something that isn't a rock band or isn't a comic, and research it and decide if that's something you're going to invest in?
Well, again, it takes a team to research it and understand it and know it. And those things that are brought to me, I educate myself on as much as I can. But pretty amazing to think that somebody without a record or even not a household name is doing the kinds of numbers that some of these acts are doing. And it's just a different day and a different business. But it's kind of encouraging because it's not all about who's on the radio. It's not all about who had the latest, biggest hit. People want to be entertained. And there's a lot of different forms of entertainment that they're willing to pay for.
For you, who is a music guy and obviously have done a lot of comedy, the idea of somebody calling you and saying, I've got this celebrity chef that wants to come in and do a lecture and maybe do some demo cooking. It's like, it's an investment. You look at it the same way. You're presenting something to an audience, or you think in your mind, this is a completely different world for me? Or is it just a new challenge that excites you?
Well, all the above, but we believe in developing artists and always having a play for them at every stage of their career. That's what I personally believe in. And of course, we want to focus on the artists that grow and have a future, and maybe you take a little bit more of a chance, or you put a little bit more effort into an act that you think, will be around a long time and we'll keep paying back that investment. Again, there's so much out there.
Does that feel like research and development to you when you lose on something in a new genre that you don't know anything about yet?
Well, if you don't really understand it, then you shouldn't be doing it. You need to understand it enough to make that investment.
Wasn't there a certain amount of at some point you just learn by doing that you got to jump in at some point and try something?
Well, of course, but you still need to figure out the right show in the right place at the right time. There's certain things that may make sense, but it might be the wrong time of the year. It might be the wrong venue. It might be the wrong market.
9 times out of 10, don't you find out half of that stuff after you go on sale?
That's why you need a team.
All right. So what are the more exciting things that you get excited about in the industry? What gets you up in the morning?
I get excited when the lights go down and the people scream. That's what I get excited about. And I do like getting up every day and going to work in the morning. And my mind is just turning with all the things that I think I'm going to do that day. And sometimes you go in and you don't get to do any of those things because there's so many other things that come up. But of course, you think about what your day is going to be like. And I'm just excited about the passion and the exchange between the artist and their fans. Because really, at the end of the day, this business is about that connection, and everything else is peripheral.
You came up in a time and point where the borders to entry in the industry were really more restrictive, that there was major independents, and actually the major independents were just the major promoters at that point, and then the indies, but it was really hard to get an arena show. You had to be in the business for 15 years or something to build to that level in most cases. You feel that the borders to entry have changed with all the different genres and different scenarios of the expansion?
Well, I think that the types of things that are out there make it so diverse that there are so many points of entry these days because there's so many different kinds of music. I mean, at Phantasma in the early days, we were one of the first promoters that didn't just do rock. We were one of the first promoters that developed country and blues and jazz and comedy because we didn't just sit around and wait for the phone to ring for the big rock act to tour.
It's funny, you didn't mention urban in there. Has that not been a thing for you guys?
No, of course, it really has been. Urban, Latin.
Particularly down where you're at.
Of course. I mean, we were the first promoters really to break and promote the larger shows with Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. And certainly urban in a big way. I mean, it was really interesting to see that happen because it taught me that you needed to explore more than just what's on your turntable.
Geographically, you've got a challenge that most of the country doesn't have to deal with. You've got hurricane season to worry about, and that can really devastate your touring calendar for a couple weeks at a time if weather should roll in. How does that affect your thinking, or do you worry about that in advance?
Well, the off-peak months, if there are any these days, are those that June, July, August, September, somewhat into October for hurricanes. But the winds seem to be blowing more than they have been in years past, so you do have to be certainly conscious of it. But you can't stop what you do, and you still have to book shows. And we moved a couple of shows this year because of a hurricane.
Was everybody pretty understanding about that? Was that pretty easy on everybody's behalf, on the agents, acts, managers?
They were. I mean, we really could have played 2 out of 3 because we wanted to come back and pick up all 3. We kind of moved all 3. And
so you only had to move 3 shows in this last cycle?
No, we had to cancel a couple that really were okay to go away. We had to move a few that actually ended up doing better. And, you know, one of them that we played off was Widespread Panic in St. Augustine. The town was up and running. Some people were still without some things. Power was mostly restored, but I have to tell you, when we came into town, people were so happy. And the restaurants and the community was so happy that something was going on.
You took their mind off of something, gave them something else to do.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to show your resilience. Certainly safety and security first, but, you know, you have to keep doing what you do.
It seems like at the heart of what we do, I guess sometimes we all take ourselves a little seriously and forget that it's entertainment. First and foremost, we're entertaining fans.
Well, that's so true. And, you know, when I did production, a lot of people used to say, how do you stay so calm and collected? And I used to say, well, first of all, I got 30 more shows in the next 40 days after this one. And I'd be real happy if they get up there and play. But if they're not going to get up there and play, or we can't do it, the sun's going to go up and the sun's going to go down. And we're really not saving lives here. We're just all here to have a good time.
Pretty grounding thought. At the end of the day, it's like people take this really seriously sometimes, and we're not curing cancer.
Hey, we're lucky to be in a fun business. I mean, I always tell people, certainly everybody that works for me knows my philosophy on this. We're in a fun business. If you're not having fun, there's a lot of other places to go work. And these days, of course, with the quality and the level of production that's out there, you know, certain artists feel compelled to match or beat or meet the level of production that's out there. But when it comes down to it, for many shows, it's about the songs. It's about the connection. Some shows, it is about the production. I mean, I learned that early on with Kiss. And Bill Coyne, way back when, told me one time it wouldn't be a Kiss show without all this stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess that is the novelty that is Kiss. And when they put the makeup back on it, the ticket sales soared through the roof. People wanted to see that.
Yeah.
I guess pro wrestling wouldn't be the same without the ring.
Exactly. And I mean, I have to say the advancements in technology are quite impressive. The muddy sound that we used to hear and the thousands of miles of cable for lighting and the par cans. And, you know, now you've got such great advancements in lighting, sound, video. It's really enjoyable to see a show these days.
It's a different world for sure. And we're presenting shows in much faster pace. The volume has increased tenfold over how it used to be. With the amount of traffic that's coming through offices, it certainly limits you to the ability of how many shows you can go to. Not being at a show that you're buying or not having the ability to be on a site for nearly as many shows as clearly used to be percentage-wise just because of the volume. How does that change what you decide to go to?
For me, I really do try and get out there. And if we have 5 shows, I'll try and go to 2 or 3. I may not go to every single one because I'm not the guy setting it up and tearing it down. But I think you do need to understand who the people are, what the markets are like, see the show, see the artist. So I go, but I just don't go as long.
You have at least a state, if not more. So that's a pretty big span of area. And you've got to have multiple shows almost every single night in different cities. It's got to be kind of hard to be represented all over the place.
Well, absolutely. And that's why we have teams of production people and teams of buyers and things like that. But we all do go to a lot of shows. I mean, I still go to 75 to 100 shows a year.
So you're out 1 to 2 times a week, if not more.
Absolutely. if not more.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And some of them are in my market and I'm home that night, and some of them I'll travel for. But I think it's important.
That's a lot of traveling. That obviously takes a toll on you personally, as far as how much office time you're getting in, how much free time you're getting in. That takes a toll.
Of course. But, you've got your computers, you've got your messages, you've got your staff. There's a way to stay in touch. And again, I might spend the morning to mid-afternoon and then travel to the show that afternoon, evening. I like seeing the shows, and I like to understand what we're selling.
Before I let you go, I got 2 quick ones for you. First of all, what was the best show you saw in the last couple of years? The single best.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's so many of those, but
you can give us a few if you want. But what really tops the chart for you?
We talk about Derek and Susan, and to see them grow the way they have, and they just keep putting out great music. So they hold a special place in my heart just because they are doing so well, and they're carrying on a tradition of a style of music that I think people want to hear, and they're just so good at it. There's so many great bands, and, you talk about maybe a couple of moments, but, you go way back to the shows we did, years ago even. And I could tell you that, when Gloria Estefan had her bus accident and people were wondering whether she was ever going to walk again, and we came back and did 5 shows at Miami Arena at the time, filmed 3 of them for HBO. And I think when she hit that stage for that first night, I literally felt like I was standing 3 feet off the ground. That's certainly a moment I'll never forget. Just so many different ones, so many great shows.
We've known each other for quite a while, and you're one of the few buyers that I truly feel do it on a higher level. I know you know how much I respect you. If somebody's building their career, trying to set themselves up for longevity, what advice do you have for the younger buyers and agents coming up in the business?
Well, as a promoter, you've got your reputation. And so that's what you have to keep paramount, is your reputation, because it's all about what you say and what you do. In this business, you can do 100 things right and 1 thing wrong, and all anybody talks about is the 1 thing you did wrong. But I think you just be true to yourself. You follow your heart. You pursue your love of music, if that's what it is, and whatever it is you're into. But you've really got to be upfront, honest, keep it simple, direct, and forward. And that's what the business moves too fast. People just want to deal with facts, and they want to deal with people that are serious about what they're doing.
The legendary John Valentino on Promoter 101. Thank you, JV.
Thank you very much, Dan.
JV is one of the most respected players in the game. It's easy to see why.
Hey, this is Mike McGinley, Troy Blakely, Mitch Rose, Peter Katzis, Mike Hayes, Tony from APA, Vince Bannon,
Deshaun Healy, Steve Rennie, Rick Canny, Sam Kinkin, and Rob McDermott. Happy to be here on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Happy birthday, it's your birthday, it's a happy birthday song. Woo-hoo!
Celebrating birthdays this week, February 9 to 15, 2018.
Friday, February 9th, Marty Winch, Sid Greenfeg, Adam Genovesian, Chaz Hammond.
Saturday, Ben Mensch, Brian Oakes, Jeff March, John Ronaldo.
Sunday, Ronnie Lapone.
Monday the 12th, Darren Lashinsky from NS Chew, Joel Girardi, Lucy Fries, Ashley Capp, and Jeff Messina.
Tuesday, Kel Houston, Jackie Miller-Knob, Joshua Newman.
Wednesday, legendary marketing genius Amy Morrison and Joel Pryor.
Thursday, Mary Gorey.
Happy birthdays to everyone from Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Mark Geiger from WME, William Morris Endeavor Entertainment, coming to you on Dan Steinberg's podcast.
If you want to reach out to us, send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net.
Quotes of the week from William Shakespeare. If music be the food of love, play on.
We will be back next week with Dan's Polestar Live keynote interview with Live Nation CEO Michael Rapino. It's pretty fucking great.
Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
This is Meg White from ICM, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.